Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2021. Same old shit, same old podcast. We're here back with Shootin the Shit here live on, well, not live, but on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, Combat Press, and everywhere else. This show is simulcasted. I am your host, Riley Kontek. We have an outstanding guest joining us for the first show of the year. Before we introduce him, though, obviously, this goes to my Northern Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana friends. And people who watch the show from that area. If you have any home construction needs, head over to facebook.com and look up Cornelius & Sons on there. If you have any home improvement projects, I know it's getting cold outside, so doing the deck probably isn't in the cards right now, but anything, bathroom, kitchen, flooring, anything like that, again, that is Cornelius & Sons on Facebook. All right. Now with our sponsorship plug out of the way, I'd like to introduce our guest this week. He is a world champion. He's the one championship featherweight champion of the world, and the first guest of 2021, Thahn Lee, is here today. Thahn, how are you today, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on the show, and you have the honor of being the first guest this year, so that's always a backhanded distinguishment, I guess. First thing I wanted to talk about, so I know that your father came here from Vietnam. So why don't you kind of just talk about how, why did he come here in the first place? And then, like, how did he get into running the gym? And then, like, how was it growing up in that gym environment?
Yeah. So he came over here during the war, out from the Vietnam War, and got sponsored by some family members that come over to the States, and ended up moving to Kentucky, of all places, Owensboro, Kentucky. And that's where he was for a little while. That's where he met my mother. That's where I was born. And then in 1990, I was 5 at the time, and we came to New Orleans for a 2-year job and never left. So happy to call New Orleans home, and great place to live. So that's why we haven't left. But, you know, he trained Taekwondo, martial arts, Kung Fu, you know, all that in Vietnam, came over to the States and continued to train. But when we moved here to New Orleans, finally found a home that he could call it a home gym, you know, in Moon College here in Metairie, Louisiana. And it was really nice to see him take over the gym and grow up in that environment. Like, my entire childhood was pretty much school, playing ball in the street, and Moon College, Taekwondo, somehow. Traveling for tournaments, going to class every night, going to summer events, barbecues, you know, family events with the school and the gym. So it was really cool to kind of be completely submerged in martial arts at pretty much all times. And obviously my dad was he's the owner of the gym, but, you know, has been my coach since I was 3-4 years old. So you know, I like it a lot. You know, I like the way he did it as a dad coach. You know, that's not always done the right way. And guys, you know, you kind of see it in sports dads, football dads, baseball dads, wrestling dads, you know, like a little overbearing and kind of living through their children and trying to push them to the highest level possible. But sometimes it can get too much, you know. And I say this in all my interviews, but I think my dad did it the absolute perfect way. I'd love to be able to mimic that, you know, as a father, you know, with my kids. So it was really cool that he did enough to push me in the right direction to improve and teach me the things that he learned along the way that kind of gave me, you know, sort of cheat codes along the way to be the best martial artist I could possibly be. But he wasn't too overbearing, too much pressure on my shoulders, none of that stuff. You know, he really wanted me to have fun with it. And I think that turned me into the fighter I am today. And, you know, I'm lucky to have it.
Absolutely, and you answered my next question about it possibly being overbearing. It's like we accidentally recorded this once already or something like that. We had some technical difficulties. Now, you said he met your mother in Kentucky. Was she American or was she Vietnamese as well?
No, she's American, like full-blown, middle of nowhere, Kentucky, white.
That's interesting. That's very, very cool. I did not know that, actually, so that's really interesting. Now, obviously, you know, your big first break was The Ultimate Fighter. I believe it was the Europe versus USA season, if I'm not mistaken. So what were your biggest lessons that you learned on The Ultimate Fighter, and maybe the pros and cons of being on the show, just based on your time on the show?
That was really my first exposure to UFC level athletes that were associated with the organization and coached and fought for them and fought for titles and things like that. So it was my first time being around that level of fighter. environment too, like training environment and gym environment, that type of thing. But it was really cool to be submerged in that, be with those guys for whatever it was, 7-8 weeks. But see that I belong there, the hard work that I've been putting in leading up to this point really was all in the right direction. The things that I hang my hat on, as far as being the type of fighter that I am, they played out well against those guys. And it's weird not being exposed to that level of competition, that level of fighter, and then going to train with those guys every day and kind of seeing like, yeah, you definitely are on the right track. You're definitely doing the right things. Oh, take this piece from this guy, this piece from that guy. But, if you do things the right way, you could be one of the best in the world. And that really boosted my confidence. But not in like an arrogant way. Like, I train with these guys. Oh, I got these guys. But it was just like, yeah, we're all doing similar things. We're all working with the right ideas, the right concepts. And, if you do this the right way and continue to get good, better and better and better every day, you could be the best,
Yeah. How was sharing the screen with Conor McGregor?
Interesting. I'll tell you what, Conor is a really cool guy, normal guy. But he does a really good job when the cameras come on and taking himself. You could see it's him. It's not an act, but you take that in front of the cameras and you kind of blow it up a little bit. And, it's, he does a really good job at what he does, but cool guy. All his coaches were cool. His team was cool. Our coaches were awesome. Everybody for the most part got along really well, and it wasn't weird at all, and then, hanging around those guys and our coaches and them going back and forth was very interesting. And, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Now, were you surprised when you weren't offered a fight on the finale?
A little bit, but I knew that I didn't give them my best showing. I knew I was way better than what I showed on the show. So they didn't get the full presentation of Thahn that I wanted to give them. So I understand why that didn't happen. And, we got another chance at the Contender series, and that's when I thought it was going to happen. But, things work out the way they work out.
Right, yeah, and you just led me into my next segment there, was talking about the Contender series. Now, can you kind of just describe, the process of the Contender series? Obviously, they shoot promos and all that. I'm assuming they're doing it while you're cutting weight. So just kind of talk about the background of that, and then just comment on your performance because, obviously, like you said, I was very surprised you weren't offered a contract. Now, if it was a COVID year, you probably would have got a contract without a second thought because it seemed like everybody got a contract this year. But, I mean, an amazing knockout, and just tell me that whole process and then comment on your performance.
No, that was a really cool experience. After being on the show and doing that with The Ultimate Fighter, kind of because you have cameras in your face 24/7, so really nothing can kind of shake you after that. The cameras can't be any closer to you, and they can't be any more constant. So, everything from there was kind of like, okay, cool, not a big deal, So we went out there, I think a few months ahead of time, and shot promos and working out and shadow boxing and all this stuff, so they could build the correct promos for the fights. And we went to the UFC Performance Institute. That was before the Apex was up, and
right.
They were doing it there. But awesome training facility. It's got everything you'd ever want training-wise in there. Really cool. So it was cool to be able to experience that and check that out. And then we got flown back out there, obviously, for fight week. Continued to train in the same area. Got to do what we needed to do to cut weight. Everything was really cool. And then, obviously, the performance on the show, we were happy about that. Happy that I fought the way I wanted to fight. I fought my fight and ended up getting the finish, which is, what we plan on doing, what we tried to do out of all of my fights. And I wanted a Thanh fight to look like a Thanh fight, and they usually play out pretty well when they do. And then the losses that I've had come from me not making it a Thanh fight, right? So that ended up well. I was excited to get the finish. I probably would have put money, on that performance that would have got me a contract, but it ended up not working out. No big deal. At the time it wasn't not a big deal. It was definitely a big deal and it was hard for me to accept, but, went on, fought a couple times past that, got picked up by one. And honestly, if I were to do it all again, I'd change nothing. Like the path that I've taken has put me in a space mentally to be pretty much, as durable and as tough mentally and emotionally as I feel like a human could be, you know. And then that's what I hang my hat on during fights and training camps and fight weeks and things like that. I feel like, you know, nothing can affect me, you know, and kind of take me off track anymore after I've been through all those ups and downs of thinking I was going to get, you know, a shot at the Ultimate Fighter and then a contract and fighting in front of Dana White and this and that, and realizing that none of that shit mattered, man. I do this because I want to fight the best guys in the world, and I'm finally with an organization where I can do that. And I'm getting matched up, and that's one thing that the belt gives me. Winning that title gives me the opportunity to always fight the baddest dude coming up, and that's the only reason I'm doing this stuff, you know. It's nice to get paid. It's nice to have a shiny little belt I can hang up on the wall, but really, it gives me the chance to fight the best dudes, and that's the only reason I'm doing this stuff, man.
Absolutely, and then obviously you're segueing perfectly into one. So obviously you took that loss in LFA, you know, which everyone knows is a UFC feeder organization. But then you get an opportunity from one who has kind of emerged as one of the top promotions in the world. And I mean, anybody who's watched your fights in one, I've seen one or two of them so far. You have just been blowing your way through the competition there, just a knockout machine. So, you know, do you think you've hit a stride since that last LFA loss in one? What are you doing differently, or like, you know, are you feeling differently? Like, all of your performances have been very good. Can you just comment on those fights leading up to your title fight?
So I lost my first pro fight. Definitely not prepared for the transition from amateur to pro. So that's what got me there. And then, honestly, every fight since then has been an improvement on me physically, tools-wise, me as a complete martial artist, and mentally, too. And then I had that lapse in who I was for the Kevin Aguilar fight. And I was at a weird spot mentally. You know, I was in a hurry to kind of get the fight over with. I just wasn't happy to be there and happy to be in the moment. But every fight before that, you know, I feel like I performed well. I was in that headspace mentally, and every fight past that, you know, has worked out really well for me. And I feel like I was continuing to be in that headspace. So it's not like something changed drastically from what I was doing before to post loss. It was really, I was doing the right things all through my career. And then for whatever reason, my head wasn't in the right spot. I just, you know, was trying to get that fight over mentally. And I paid for it. And then everything past that I've gotten back into the groove that I wanted to be in. And everything's been great, man. I've been enjoying being there, enjoying making the walk, enjoying, you know, doing these little adventures every fight. I got to fly to Thailand and Indonesia and Thailand again, like all these cool spots that we're going to, Singapore most recently. And it's awesome to be able to have a little adventure every time you go and fight, right? So that's been it's been awesome to rechannel being grateful to be able to do this for a job.
For sure. And then in your last fight, you fought Martin Nguyen. You won that by third-round knockout. Again, all four of your wins in one have been by knockout. Do you think that was your best performance as a fighter yet?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was the closest that the fans have gotten to see to the real Thahn Lee, you know? Like every fighter they know who they are. They know what tools and how they can perform. And then when you get out into the cage, you try to get as close to that as possible. And sometimes guys don't do it well at all. Sometimes guys do really well. This last fight, I think, was as close as you guys have gotten to see the real me in sparring and training and all that good stuff. But actually, in the actual fight, my movement, my headspace, you know, the builds off of the tools that were landing, the builds off of the shots that weren't landing, my defensive movement, you know, me taking power off of shots that he was looking like he was landing real clean. So very happy with that. Obviously, I'm very, very critical of every performance. I was up the next morning. You know, we were in quarantine. So after the fight, I couldn't go visit my coaches or anything. They were in different hotel rooms. But as soon as I got up, you know, we FaceTimed each other. I put the phone, set it up so we could see me shadowboxing and running through the fuck ups pretty much that I did in the fight. And we fixed the game plan right then and there. I mean, it was within 4 hours of waking up. We're doing this, watching each other, picking each other's brains, trying to figure out what tools need to fit in where. And, you know, we had a whole new game plan for the rematch immediately. And that's what we've been obviously training on a regular basis and all that good stuff. So, you know, if we do end up seeing Martin again, which I think we will, you know, I think it'll play out a lot different, similar, but different.
For sure, for sure. Now, are you on restriction right now because of the more strict travel guidelines? Because I know there's a lot of fighters, especially American fighters, that participate in one that haven't been able to get as many fights, or they've been careful getting those guys in. Are you on restriction right now that you can't do it, or are you just in between fights waiting to accept the next one?
Yeah, it's just in between fights, letting the hands heal up a little bit, bounce those off of Martin's hard forehead. So, the hands took a little damage, but other than that, feeling good, still training, obviously. I don't really, take breaks in between fights or anything like that. So staying sharp, adding some tools to the toolbox and sharpening some others. So we're just waiting on fight news and trying to get that date down and try to get there as soon as possible,
Absolutely. And I know that you're the world champion, but one also puts on Muay Thai and kickboxing matches. Is that on your radar as well, or do you just want to continue strictly doing MMA?
So, I get asked that question a lot, and I'm definitely down to eventually doing those things, but I'm not anywhere near done as far as like my goals in MMA. Mm-hmm. So those got to be accomplished first before I start branching out. But understandable, of course. But there's a couple of things I definitely want to do that I think might take a little time. And I'm not a young bird, chickling anymore. So I gotta get this stuff done, so I don't have a ton of extra time to kind of play around there. So I want to move up in weight class and fight Christian Lee for his belt. I want to be the first one to fight from promotion to promotion. I want to do like fights against the Bellator champion Pitbull. I want to do fights against the UFC champion Volkanovski or whoever takes that belt from him. Like, I want to be the first guy to do that. And, we're on our way to making that happen.
Absolutely. Now, before we get to the this weekend's UFC fight predictions, we're just going to talk about the main and the co-main event. This was just a random thing. So, if our fans go to your Twitter or any of your social media pages, you have a lot of videos of you doing techniques, kicking water bottles, doing all that good stuff. And I don't know how I got this connection, but have you ever considered doing Hollywood martial arts stunts? Because I'm sure there's plenty of work there.
I'd love to. I've always, even as a kid, I've always wanted to be like a bad guy in a Ninja Turtle movie or a fucking bad guy in a Power Rangers movie or something like that. That'd be a dream come true. So whoever out there can make that happen, let's do it.
Well, I think that it would have been the perfect time. I know Mortal Kombat comes out this year, and I remember watching the old ones, and I was just like, they probably had some good stunt guys in there, and they were high level strikers, karate guys. So I just always thought that was interesting, and I would assume Hollywood would continue to need martial arts stunt guys. So that was why I kind of thought of that, especially considering how high level your striking is, especially most movies.
I like it. Let's make it happen.
All right, I'll talk to a few people. All right, so let's get to this weekend's UFC Fight Island predictions, and then we'll get you out of here. Let's talk about the co-main event first. We got a couple of old goats in the welterweight division. We got Carlos Condit taking on Matt Brown. So, Thahn, why don't you just kind of, what do you think happens in this fight, and do you have a prediction?
Man, that's going to be a tough one. I actually haven't seen those guys fight in a little bit. It's been a minute since they stepped in, but I'm huge fans of both of those guys. If I had to put money on somebody, I'd go Condit. I think the way he mixes up his kickboxing and mixes up his tools, and he has a little bit more variety. I think he's going to. I think he'll land something. We'll look in maybe left head kick, something like that. He mixes those up with his hands really well, so I see that coming out.
Yeah, I think both of these guys are both coming towards the end of the line here in terms of their careers, which is fine because, Condit's had over 40 fights. Matt Brown is probably in the same vicinity. Condit was on a 5-fight losing streak in his last fight. He beat Court McGee in October, actually, so he did fight recently. So there was that. So he is back in the win column. As for Matt Brown, he took one fight in 2020. He was knocked out by Miguel Baeza. That broke a 2-fight winning streak for him. But he's one of those guys where you're not going to find a boring fight from either one of these guys. I think this has serious fight of the night potential. I'm going to agree with you. I do think Carlos Condit has more tools to get it done, though, and he's got one hell of a chin. So I have Condit as well.
That he does.
Absolutely. And then in the main event, obviously, for the first UFC event, and this is actually on ABC, so I mean, even if you don't have cable, you could definitely still catch this main card. Now, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the morning, so people who watch one will probably be actually excited that this is also in the morning for them as well. We have former featherweight champion Max Holloway taking on Calvin Kattar. So why don't you kind of just break down what you see in this fight, and if you got a prediction, throw it our way.
That's going to be a really interesting fight, I think. Kattar's got nice hands, real power in his hands. Holloway, we know what Holloway brings to the table with his volume, his fight IQ. I think it's going to be really interesting. I continue to grow as a Holloway fan day by day and fight after fight after fight. I think I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb here, and I think the power of Kattar is going to take its toll. I think Max, I don't think his volume is going to be enough to kind of slow the offense from Kattar, so I think that's going to kind of touch him up a little bit, and I think the power is going to get to him.
Yeah, I think this is a really close fight, actually. Holloway was the champion, and he's actually lost 3 of his last 4, but both last 2 were to Volkanovski for the title, so it's not like he's been taking easy fights.
Pretty sure he won the second one.
It was very close, a split decision. So I think I've heard arguments from both sides. That's why those close fights that go to the judges. That's Dana says it the best, right? Don't leave it in the hands of the judges, unfortunately. But like you said, volume-wise, Holloway is probably at the advantage. Where, I agree with you, Kattar definitely has the power advantage. And Kattar's on a 2-fight winning streak, including knocking out Jeremy Stephens, who's not an easy guy to put away. So this one is a toss-up, honestly. I know you said you're going to take Kattar just to make things interesting. I will take Holloway here, but man, I could really see it going either way for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, Thahn, as usual, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really interesting stuff. Before I let you go, though, I will let you plug capriciously. Where can we find you? Anybody you'd like to thank? The floor is yours.
Oh, appreciate that. Pretty much Thahn Lee, MMA, anything. That's my handles on pretty much everything I got. So check that out, and check out ThahnLeeMMA.com for class information and signing up at the gym. But, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and can't wait to go out there and defend the belt.
Absolutely, and we're looking forward to that, too. I will plug myself really quick. This show weekly on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. We're looking to have Dennis Bermudez on next week. We might have 2 shows because there's 2 UFCs next week. This show also simulcasts on Combat Press, also on MMA Intel. Check out my Facebook and my Twitter. I usually post new shows there. I also got bored and put up some random content that hopefully makes you guys laugh. So that's up on the YouTube page as well. So once again, Thahn, I can't say it enough. Thank you for coming on. So fans, for Thahn Lee, I'm Riley Kontek, signing out here saying continue watching the fights in 2021. Continue watching the show. Go fuck yourselves. Good night.